Hello everyone, my name is Gradle, and I'm here to bring you another Genshin Impact video. But this time, it's a series of videos about different comps for Razor. So be sure to subscribe if you want to get notified when other videos are out. Before we begin, I'd like to remind that this video is not about big numbers but rather focus on synergies and mechanics to help you improve your Genshin experience. Why the series and why Razor? Razor is one of the top damage dealers in the game. He is a 4-star character, which means he is more accessible than other top-tier DPS characters, and has a higher probability to enhance his constellations. But like with all other characters in the game, he has downside as well. And these are the things that we're gonna talk about in the upcoming videos and show you team comps to solve some of his limitations. But for now, let's focus on his kit and potential gearing options, so we don't have to repeat it in every other videos. Razor's Ascension gives him physical damage bonus, and he would need the following items in order to level up and ascend. Masks are dropped by Hilichurls. Varada Amethyst and Lightning Prism can be obtained by defeating the Electro Hypostasis. Wolfhooks can be farmed in Wolvendom, or can be purchased from Chloris, a wandering little girl east of Windrise. Both sources has 3-day respawn or refresh time, so be sure to farm ahead of time if you're planning to raise your Razor. I personally believe that leveling or ascending any character past 80 is a waste of resources, because there is no content that really requires a maxed out character at the moment. The second is that the amount of resource that you need to level up from 80 to 90 is almost the same for a new character from 1 to 80. So I'd rather build up new characters. His talents requires masks and resistance books, which can be obtained by clearing Forsaken Rift every Tuesday, Friday, and Sundays. You can also get these books from chests, events, or battle pass. For higher levels of talents, you will need the Valin's Claw, which can be obtained by defeating the Valin at Storm Terror once a week. Crown of Insight, which is only available currently on events, is needed to max out his talent. His passive skill includes Woven Sprint, which reduces stamina cost for sprinting. His A3, Awakening, reduces his elemental skill down and resets its cooldown every time you use his burst. His A4, Hunger, increases his energy recharge rate when his energy is below 50%. His normal attack, Steel Fang, performs up to 4 consecutive attacks, a spinning charge attack that consumes stamina, and deals AoE with plunge attacks, just like any other Claymore units in the game. His elemental skill, Claw and Thunder, deals electro damage and has 2 activation methods. The first one is a quick press that deals damage to enemies in front of him, and gains an electro sigil for 18 seconds that increases his energy recharge rate. He can gain up to 3 electro sigils, and gaining a new one refreshes their duration. Holding elemental skill, on the other hand, deals massive damage over a small AoE and converts all electro sigils into energy for Razor. Based on my test without any energy recharge addition, at level 80, 3 electro sigils can gain up to 30 to 35% of his energy. So if you're not running any electro resonance, always stock up 3 sigils and then execute hold once he reaches around 65% of his burst energy to fully charge it. And always make it a habit to press his skill right after bursting, or off cooldowns to increase his burst uptime. His burst, Lightning Fang, summons a wolf that deals electro damage to nearby enemies. For 15 seconds, the wolf deals additional electro damage alongside Razor's normal attacks. It also increases his attack speed, electro resistance, and resistance to interruptions, while making him immune to electro charge. This, however, disables his charge attacks, and these effects will be removed when Razor leaves the field. His burst is so good that you would want to maximize every second. And this is why most people say that he is selfish or a field hugger, which is a valid reason. But you see, it is also a good thing because you have the option not to heavily invest on his teammates and just focus on Razor himself. Then in late game, you would most probably want to invest on supports that deals damage while they are off field, like Fischl, Xingqiu, Albedo, Xiangling, and many other characters. His C1 lets him deal more damage after picking up elemental orb or particles. C2 increases his crit rate when hitting enemies with less than 30% HP. C3 and C5 increases the level of his burst and skill. C4 decreases depth of enemies hit by press skill. C6 deals extra electro damage every 10 seconds and grants electro sigil when he is not on burst. As a summary, he is what we normally call a split damage type. His normal deals physical damage, while his skill and burst deals electro. And I would guess he does around 55 to 65% of his total damage as physical, making him one of the best, if not the best, physical damage dealer in the game. He also applies electro quite fast and consistently, so I think elemental builds also has potential. His constellation focuses on increasing his damage and damage dealing effectiveness, so he is not really designed as a support. For artifacts, Gladiator is probably one of the best set for him because his kit revolves around his burst to boost his normal attacks. So it is expected that you would do a lot of normal attacks. And that is what 4-piece Gladiator would give, 35% normal and charge damage bonus. And the only condition is that the user should be using either Claymore, Sword, or Forearm. This is an exceptional choice even if you're only doing normal attacks. But if you ask me, I would suggest using other characters in your team while waiting for his burst to come back up. This is because skills of your other characters might have higher damage than his normal attacks alone. Or applying necessary elements or reactions to prepare for his burst, like applying cryo, so that when he bursts, you will already trigger superconduct. The only problem with Gladiator is that it is harder to farm because it only drops from world bosses, which requires a lot of resins, or from boxes obtained in Spiral Abyss, which is also limited. You can also get a few of these in your adventurer's book, but again, limited. If you're not able to get decent substats for Gladiator, a mix with 2-piece Bloodstain could also work, as it increases your physical damage by 25% until you get better Gladiator pieces, of course. Alternatively, if by any chance you didn't get Gladiator pieces at all, or it is being used by other characters, then 4-piece Bolide is very good option, as it rivals Gladiator in potential damage. However, this set requires you to have a team that can provide shields. Thundering Fury focuses on electro damage and has lower potential damage, but allows you to spam his skill more frequently for higher burst uptime and higher reaction damage. Thunder Suitor is actually the highest potential damage, at least in my calculation, but it's very situational because it relies on enemies being affected by electro first before getting the 35% damage buff. For early game or 4-star options, you can't go wrong with Martial Artist. Now, for your main stats on your artifacts, attack percent on timepiece is the only thing that actually gives us value here. Elemental Mastery don't really scale well with electro reactions, and he doesn't really need HP or depth. His kit already has a good energy recharge mechanics as well. His goblet, on the other hand, is interesting. While I agree that physical damage is probably the best choice here if you want to min-max your build. But if you don't have a good physical goblet, then attack percent would do just fine. Because in reality, if you're using Razor only during his burst, then you're only losing around 2% potential damage. Electro Goblet is probably not bad as well if you keep using his skills off cooldown. If you like spamming hold skill, then Electro Goblet can be a better choice. Selecting your goblet only sets priority on how you play Razor. If you opt for physical damage, then around 60% of his damage will come from his normal attacks, which means you can ignore his skill altogether if you have a good energy regeneration within the team. Opting for attack or electro on the other hand, shifts your damage 50 to 60% electro damage, which means you have to pop his skill off cooldown to maximize your electro damage. For his circlet, this is normally crit rate or crit damage, depending on what you currently have. But in my opinion, prioritizing crit rate on substat and crit damage main stat on circlet is by far the easiest route because we have weapon that can provide crit rate. I mean, of course we also have crit damage weapon, but its passive isn't really that good in my opinion. I would still suggest getting both crits if you can, but don't farm too much to get both on one piece. For artifact levels, in general, I only have them at level 16, aside from a few well-rolled pieces, which I pushed to 20. I decided to keep them at 16 because I feel like I will still replace them in the future. When leveling artifacts, my general rule is there should be at least one crit substat and attack percent for me to level it up to 16. If I roll into defensive substat twice, I would stop and feed it to the next potential piece. For those with 3 initial substats, I would only level them up to 4 again if it already has crit substat, just to see the 4th roll. If it fits my general rule, then I would try and push it to 16. I only push my pieces to 20 if they have crit rate and crit damage. This is of course only for my DPS artifacts. Now for weapons, if you have 5 star, use it. The calculations you're seeing in your screen doesn't include their passive, and their passive deals significant damage or buff. But if I have to choose, I will pick Wolf's Gravestone for my everyday use for the team buff, which I think is going to be useful even after switching him out. For 4 stars, crit weapons are by far the highest potential damage, but can suffer from consistency if the ratio is not properly optimized. Prototype and Snow Tomb are on the same boat as selecting Goblet. Depending on your playstyle, you can opt to use one over the other, but in general, they are both good weapons to use. Range Slasher is situational, and if you can keep its passive up, then it's a decent choice, especially when you have it refined. Now for refinement, at first I believe that craftable weapons are easier to refine, but after 2 months of playing this game, I realized that it is actually harder to get prototypes to craft weapons than to get multiple copies in wishes. Or maybe it's just me. Please let me know what you think about this on the comment section below. And finally, we have the 3 stars for early game. The Bait Club and Skyrider are both good options. A Skyrider can in fact be better than other 4-star options below level 80. For weapons level, at the moment, I'm quite okay having my weapons at level 80 unascended. I feel that they are more than enough to handle the current content of the game. So be sure to gauge what level of weapons you're comfortable with so you can save up some resources. And that's all for this video. Again, if you like this or interested in knowing more team comps, feel free to subscribe so you can get notified. You can also comment down below if you have questions or thoughts you want to share. For the next video, we're gonna talk about Sweeping Fang, a pure physical team comp. See you there!